All right, so good people, great people, God's people. Welcome to I don't know what episode this is, but welcome to Ollie's office. Today with me I have Miss Amanda Price, Miss AP for VP. Right, Amanda's a very close friend of mine. We went to undergrad together. She is an amazing young lady. We're gonna say SY. You feel what I'm saying? Because she has that accolade. She has those accolades. But Amanda, please introduce yourself and who you are, what it is that you do.
I'm AP. I'm a lawyer. I'm licensed to practice in DC and North Carolina. I'm kind of building like the practice in North Carolina right now. So I've done a lot of family thus far. I feel like kind of when you get into your solo practice, it's sometimes one of the easiest things to fall into. But like the civil litigation, I kind of do really a little bit of everything. Like honestly, people just call me, and if I feel like that I can figure it out or I know a little bit about it, I roll with it. So I probably have some employment discrimination, workers' comp, of course, like some power of attorneys and wills coming up, maybe. I just picked up a criminal, but I've done a lot of family law. That's about the first case that I picked up was personal injury and family. And I probably have more family law cases and civil litigation than anything. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. That's where I live. It's my city. Shout out to the 704. We out here. Yeah, I went to Bama State and I went to Howard. So I did HBCUs twice.
Yeah. Out here. Okay. Okay. All right. So we grooving and we moving. I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Before we started recording, we were having a conversation about how it is that I was thinking about how to intersect law and mental health in the Black community, looking at things from an intergenerational perspective. And I told Amanda I was going to ask her a question after we started recording. And here's that question. Do you think that a number of family issues within specifically Black communities in the family court system, do you feel that they are rooted in unresolved family traumas?
Oh yes. Absolutely. Like I feel like that all of our family trauma, like from, I guess you could say the best to the worst, plays out in family court in the worst way, 9 times out of 10. Because you're talking, it's an adversarial process.
Mm.
It's a plaintiff and there's a defendant.
Okay, so can you speak more on the adversarial process? Ooh, go ahead.
So, like when you're in a criminal context, when you're charged with the crime, it is the state of North Carolina versus you. And you've committed a crime and the state is now attempting to hold you responsible for whatever crimes. But in civil spaces, there's a plaintiff and there's a defendant. There's a person who typically comes to court first with the issue, and that issue is against the other person.
Right.
So when you're in family court, whoever files a document in court first is going to always be the plaintiff. And then you have the other parent, typically a parent. Sometimes it's other people in families, depending on how the family dynamic is. It could be a grandmother or a grandfather or aunt or uncle or a godparent. But in most spaces, it's a parent against another parent.
Right.
And it's adversarial. So is if you have two lawyers in the room, we are both fighting for that parent's interest.
Right.
And that's not always the best thing because you're talking about a family here, or what used to be a family, or if you have children together, whether or not you're married or in a relationship, your family, you have something in common, which is this child. And me as your lawyer, I'm trying to represent your interests, and your individual interests may not necessarily even be what the best interests are for the child. But then you have the court who's trying to operate in the best interest of the child with these two parties that are versus. It is you versus the other person, literally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this adversarial process, right? Looking at it from a lens of we are being combative in this space instead of communicative, instead of collaborative. I can see how that can be rooted in intergenerational trauma as it relates to I have to utilize particular powers of leverage over you in order to get a need met or in order to extrapolate and what I would perceive to be an advantageous outcome, right? And I think that's important. It's important because, how can I say this? We as Black people, some of the patterns of our behaviors from the things that we have experienced in the past manifest in such a way where we create larger obstacles around the obstacles that are already there, right? We tend to engage in such a way where it becomes detrimental to us at a microcosmic level, right? Even so much as an individual person, we tend to make decisions if we are experiencing a particular set of psychosocial stressors, we then begin to make nihilistic decisions, right? So let me ask you another question. When these cases are playing out, when you're seeing them occur in court, what is your thought process usually?
Oftentimes, I feel like this is petty. I often feel like that what's going on in here has absolutely nothing to do with the child. And I say this all the time, which is like, I'm really committed that in 2022, unless people are coming to me wanting to mediate or come to an agreement, I'm not picking up any new family law cases. I'm not, because y'all don't need a judge. Y'all need therapy. And then one of my homies, he's also in a similar space, Robert Mays, Dr. Robert Mays. And he said, and then they don't want therapy. They just want validation and power, and somebody to assert a power on their behalf. And it's absolutely true, because a lot of these mothers and fathers, y'all are not fighting about these children. Y'all are not arguing about what is best for this child. Y'all are mad at each other for whatever reasons or whatever the dynamic of your relationship is or was or used to be. And now you all have done a whole bunch of transgressions against each other, maybe one person more than the other. And now you want this judge to validate your feelings and how you feel about what the other person has done, and they're not worthy to be a parent or not worthy to get this amount of time or that amount of time because of what they've done to you. And it's just like, no, y'all really need therapy because you want your feelings to be validated.
Absolutely.
And the judge may or may not validate your feelings. And then why are we looking to, in my opinion, not even my opinion, what's the statistical fact, majority white judges to validate our opinions? When we are in criminal court, we hate the judge. Black people are not calling 12 every day on a random just for anything. But when it comes to these family law issues and you want to fight with your baby mama or you want to fight with your baby daddy, you'll call the law on them. Since when do we like 12? Since when? But when in a family law context, it's like, I want the judge to make a decision on my behalf. No, you want your feelings validated. Mm-hmm. You need to go work out some therapy, and you need to get your children some therapy as well, because they are watching y'all toxic ass behaviors play out. And no matter how old they are, they may not be in the courtroom, but they can feel y'all. They know what's going on, even if they may not know the details. And then you got the parents who share every court detail with their child. I'm talking children under the age of 10. And you go on telling your child, your mama trying to take you away from me. Your daddy trying to take you away from me. If I don't win the court hearing today, then you're going to have to go stay with... What the hell are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? Do y'all think that white people know what's best for Black children on any given day? But in the family law context, that's what y'all do. Y'all are going to a space. You may look up and get a Black judge, maybe. But we all know most judges are white, and that's just what it is. And you are in here letting these people who don't know you or your situation make decisions about what is best for Black children. It drives me crazy. It's just like, what are y'all doing?
You said something extremely interesting. And when you said it, I thought about it. I was like, wow, I've never thought about it in that context. So in a particular situation where they are looking to have their feelings affirmed, they are yielding, or I'm sorry, engaging in a particular resource that is not emotions or strengths based, but is force and power based. That's one. Two, you'd rather go to a white judge than a white mental health clinician in order to extrapolate some type of feelings of a need being met. That's two. And also three, either way, the fear that you have in the mental health and the social work community is actually much more likely to happen in the law and, legal, in legal context, because I work and have worked with kids on the other side of that entire process who go to group homes, who go to RCS, who go to these particular houses where they have to stay for a period of time until the case is resolved, or because one parent is not fit to be a parent, but the other parent was so concerned about this child not being with the other parent or them not being in the situation that they didn't see how that carryover would occur, because it was a two-income household. But now each one of these are one-income households, and you all don't have enough to support this child at this point in time. So now this child has to go into the system in order for you to get your things together, and you don't know how long that'll take. You don't, right? So working with kids on the other side of that, you're absolutely correct. Them having to go get therapy or them having to go get these services is usually is what is occurring, because these kids remember. It's not like
They remember. They not gonna forget.
they remember, right? Because for them it's traumatic. You dig what I'm saying? So looking at this from the perspective of utilizing legal means in order to get your feelings reinforced, in my mind, it's almost like a parental thing. I'm gonna tell somebody on you, right? And
Yes, I'm gonna tell the authorities on you, and the authorities are gonna make you fall in line with how I think things should go because X, Y, and Z is happening. I'm right. I'm right about this. The other person did me wrong. And so, and all the time, it's not even that they did the child wrong. There was a breakdown in y'all relationship, or y'all never had a relationship from Jump Street. And so now you in court with somebody who you don't even know.
on top of not even knowing them, you don't even like them.
You don't even like them. And I'm just confused because y'all liked each other when y'all had this baby.
Y'all didn't. They just wanted to. They just wanted to hunch.
Y'all liked each other long enough for procreation to take place, and now y'all hate each other. Y'all are reaping the consequences of the adult consensual decision for y'all to have sex, and now y'all in here fighting. Like, I'll give you one example. I was in court maybe 2 weeks ago, and it was a hearing before my hearing. And so while I'm in the hearing, like all the people who are scheduled, there's probably 2 or 3 cases in the court that day. And I take that opportunity while things are playing out in other hearings to point things out to my clients so they can just have a better understanding of what's going on, because your average person really doesn't know what's going on in the courts dynamic. Even if they're there listening and testifying, they don't know what a lot of the words mean. Your average person doesn't know what's what. People tend to take offense to things and actions that are just like procedure because they just don't know what's going on. So I'm in here with one case, and it's a family, well, 2 parents before my case. Clearly, they're well off. It's clear that they got a little money. Right. This is a Black couple. The guy, I don't know what he does, but the woman in particular was a dentist. They are in court basically arguing about whether or not the mother is in contempt of the custody agreement and not giving the father his visitation weekends. Okay. The judge ultimately decided that that wasn't happening. But the thing that like stuck out to me the most is that they were specifically talking about how their daughter is having some type of mental issues right now, in which she has a psychologist, she has a psychiatrist, she has somebody at school checking on her, and she was contemplating suicide. They didn't get into the details of the reasons. And I'm like, y'all are in court right now arguing about whose weekend it is, and y'all baby is ready to kill herself. What the fuck are y'all doing? Like, what? Y'all should not be in here in court right now wasting time. Y'all need to be focused, really, really focused as a collective unit as to what you're going to do with your daughter to ensure that she remains here on this earth because she's contemplating not being here anymore. And y'all are in here arguing about whose weekend it is. What's really important? Does it even matter? And it seems like the girl might have been of a teenage age, like at least in teenager. So at this point, she probably can decide when and where she want to go to whose house and on what weekend. But this is what y'all are in court. Y'all are in court arguing about this right now. And I mean, taking 2-3 hours out of the day to stand in front of the judge. Y'all got money and time and resources to pay y'all lawyers to come in here and argue, and y'all baby is wants to hurt herself. Why is y'all focus not on whatever her mental health plan is with, the people who are helping her through this moment or stage, and figuring out what y'all need to do to be a collective unit or a united front to support her? That's what y'all should be talking about. But y'all in court.
Once again, those issues of communication, right? Or those issues of being able to resolve conflict. It's when you put it in that perspective, it's very clear that the central point of the entire argument or the entire, litigation process is ego reinforcement. You want to be right, and you want to be right in a grandstanding way. And you're absolutely correct. Your child is having a mental health crisis that's probably being exacerbated by what's going on in this courtroom right at this moment in time, right? You all are in this courtroom and you don't know that this is a stressor for your child. So instead of learning how to mediate in a less accusatory way, you utilize the powers that be in order to, once again, like you said, reinforce your emotions.
And people don't want to mediate. They don't want to be. It's in DC and a lot of places now. In North Carolina, if you file for a modification, or in DC, once you file for anything, before you get to a judge, you are going to go to the mediation office. You're going to do an intake interview with one of the intake specialists. Each parent is going to go through it, or each party rather that's involved. So even if it's a grandparent, because the questionnaire is going to evaluate you all's relationship to make sure that you all aren't abusive. If you are in a DV situation, then they typically don't recommend mediation because y'all are in a different type of situation in which different type of intervention is needed, and there's a different power and control dynamic between y'all because of the abuse that's went on. Right. But most people, probably 90+%, are not in those situations. There's a small percentage of people that probably are. Everybody else. And if I had $1 when I worked in the mediation office, every time somebody just said, well, I just want to go in front of the judge, I don't want to mediate. In mediation, you have the opportunity that if you all come to an agreement, the judge will stamp and sign as your custody order whatever it is that you all want.
Right.
Versus you're going to go in front of the judge, and 9 times out of 10, neither one of you are going to get what you want. But you have an opportunity to sit down and to really hash out the details as specific as you want them to be with mediators who are going to validate your feelings, who are going to say, okay, she wants this because X, Y, and Z, and he wants that because X, Y, and Z, and they want that because X, Y, and Z. And you're going to get everything that you need to say out. But people would just be so dead set. I don't want to mediate. I just want to see the judge. I just want to see the judge. And then when they get in front of the judge and they realize that the judge is not going to listen to every little thing that has went wrong in your relationship for however long, however since you've been involved with your other, with the child's other parent, now they're upset because their feelings weren't validated and they feel like that nobody's listening to them. When if you would have went to the mediator, you would have been heard. So do you want to be heard? Do you want the child to be taken care of? Then you start getting into people's ideas about what they think is good parenting and why, and the reasons why they think the other person isn't up to par. And some of it is just like, well, a child should be with their mother. So you feel like that as a mother, the child is just supposed to be with you off of the strength that you are the mother, And so that is the reason why you think that you should have the child more than the father.
Right.
Instead of y'all having some type of equal playing field and the amount of time that the child is spending with you. Or then you have people's ego that comes into play. So I think sometimes with the mothers, they feel like less than a mother if they have to if the child ends up being with the father more than they are with them.
Talk a little bit more about that.
I had this conversation with somebody that's kind of like my big sister here in Charlotte. Right. And she has 2 boys. And eventually she sent her sons to live with their fathers because she said, financially, it was the best decision at the time. They're getting older and they needed a more hard male influence around them, like, more solid, not hard as in like rough, but just, just a more solid male influence around them. And at first I didn't want to give them up because I felt like less than a mother because I had been doing so much on my own for so long. And then so relinquishing that power over made me feel like as if I was a failure as a mother, that I could not do this by myself. And then she said, I realized that was my ego that felt like that I was less than a mother because my children aren't going to stop being my children just because they physically live with their fathers now. Absolutely. Their fathers are in good financial standing right now to take care of them, and they need them to supplement some things that I simply cannot give them. Right. So she said she did it, but a lot of people, a lot of mothers, it's like they feel some of it is the history of the court, like in the tender years presumption, and that a child should be with their mother during the tender years. Mm-hmm. But a lot of mothers, I don't know. They, like I said, they feel like a failure. And I think some of that is our trauma of being in single parent households, because right. So many of us were raised by just our mothers who did awesome jobs. Some of these, they did what they could do. Right. And people feel like, my mother did it on her own, and so I got to do it on my own. And it's just like child rearing was never meant to be a solo thing. It wasn't. Ever. But we've adopted this mentality that just because we have had to do it out of necessity, now that is something that we just got to do now. And it's like, no, y'all, it's okay to have help. Why don't you want help?
Because not receiving help and being able to continue to do it is a badge of honor that Black people have internalized over time. We have internalized honor in the struggle as a center point of our ability to be tenacious. It's a crazy thing. We pride ourselves on our ability to get beaten.
And to be able to take it well and to still push through. And it's like, yes, you made it through, but you didn't deserve every last one of them beatings. All of them beatings weren't necessary. It wasn't necessary. Absolutely. No, and then the men drive me crazy too. I like the it's a lot of stereotypical, little sound bites about family court that men pass around that just simply in this day and age aren't true.
Really?
They're just not true.
Explain.
Now I will say this. Yes, family court is biased on behalf of mothers.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But to the extent that it is biased varies very much from courtroom to courtroom, state to state, city to city, county to county. Mm-hmm. And men, especially Black men, have this overall, it's set up against me. So either one, if they do need to go in the space to assert their rights, they don't do it because they automatically assume that somebody is going to rule against them. Or when they do get in there, they're not completely honest about how the proceedings are going on. And there are a lot of men who are not honest about that they're just as worse as the bitter baby mamas that they talk about. And then they want to get on the child support when most of them aren't even in the ballpark to pay but a couple of $100 worth of child support per month. But they want to pocket watch the mama. Like in DC, if I had $1 for every man that I saw that had primary physical custody of their children, because in DC, them men are taking they are taking them baby mamas to court, and they are going to get their children. They're not, a lot of them are not having it. But then some men, they kind of, when they do need to go in and wield a little power, because you do have rights as a father, and in most states there is a presumption of joint custody. It's not the mother over the father. There is a presumption of joint custody. So most of the time when you walk in there, bare minimum, they're going to attempt to give you 50-50 of everything if y'all can handle it. But a lot of men haven't had their children 24/7 around the clock. So they really don't even have a conception of how much it costs to raise a child or to have a child physically in their presence all the time. They don't know how much it costs. So they think that when they give up that $200 or that $300, they like, well, what are you doing with that? Y'all know our mamas used to make us cut off the light and cut off the water because y'all running up my light. Like, a child in your house alone will send your light bill sky high. And we know that because we used to get yelled at for running up utilities in our houses. But we act like, oh, if you can't take care of the baby by yourself, then you just need to give the baby to the baby's daddy. Children were not made to be taken care of by one person. So why do we have this mentality that if the baby is with you and you can't do it, then you just need to give the baby to me, and vice versa? This was a job made for more than two people, actually.
100%, right? And I think this rush to power, or this scramble to be right, does a lot more damage than it does good, because in the long run, you still have more trauma on top of the trauma that was already present when you got to the courtroom, right? You're creating more spaces by which your children aren't necessarily able to properly process conflict or properly process, how to move through something that's frustrating, because they've learned that I can just wield this type of power, right? Or go through this type of process. And it's difficult to then remove that child from that, right? Even so much as having a non-traditional household, and this child begins to have, some mental health issues of their own, as you were speaking about the situation with the dentist and the other man. It becomes a question about stability, ultimately, right? Are you contributing to a stable environment in which a child can grow without the interruptions of an exterior party?
And then why is it that sometimes the exterior party has to force us to cooperate with each other and to communicate with each other and to be respectful to each other? Like, just on a bare minimum level, like, just we need a court order to do that. We need a court order that we can be held in contempt with in order to respect the other person that we had a child with.
Right.
In order to not say anything disrespectful to them, or to not curse at them, or to not, mistreat them in front of the children. Right. Things like that are written in custody orders. Parties are not to disparage the other party in the presence of a child. Why does somebody have to tell you that?
See, I never knew that.
Custody orders can get very specific. They can, and depending on the circumstances, they can get really, really, real specific. Like now, there's a thing called Family Wizard. Right. It's an app in which parties can communicate with each other, and it's monitored. So like I have a case right now to which the parties will only be able to communicate with each other via this app unless it is an emergency with their children. And so if they are to cuss in this app or to do anything of that nature, it will not stand. It will tell them that they need to reevaluate this message, or they need to edit this message. if it's seeing that the language or the communication is getting too hostile.
That's wild. So it's like AI for mediation.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And so in that, and then the court can have access to it. So that way, if anything is said out of order, it's like proof.
Mm-hmm.
So why do we have to have a special app so y'all can talk to each other? Because if y'all just talk to each other on text messages and through y'all cell phone, y'all gonna cuss each other out all the time. Y'all gonna fight and argue about things that aren't even important.
Right.
Or y'all mad, especially the people who were in relationship. Oh, the people who were in relationship with each other are the worst, because now you mad because it's a new significant other involved. And now you pressed about who, and the men really get, this is where the men's control. You start to see they come out a little bit with the control. Right. Oh yeah, because you're trying to keep up with what your old lady used to be doing because she got a new man, and now you pressed about, I need to know who's around my child. When this woman ain't questioned the women that you with, she just asked, could I meet sis? Just so I can know who my children are around. And your mom and the mama go on vacation, she all types of hoes, and you this and that. What is that about? Because that's not about your children.
It's not.
And I guess that's the overall, thing that I feel like about family law, that it's really not about the children. And our children are suffering the most.
I think that in closing, whenever we're talking about aspects of Blackness in particular white spaces, whether it be legal, whether it be health, whether it be, corporate, we have to always think about how it is that we are expressing ourselves in these spaces and how we are allowing these people in these spaces to mediate some of our decisions or to mediate some of our perceptions. When we get into that space, 9 times out of 10, the outcome is not going to be in our favor. It's not going to be constructive for us usually, right? What I will say is this. I think that now that millennials are having more open conversations about mental health and therapy and things of that nature, like, I've been seeing a number of couples, and the number of couples that I've been seeing have been Black, right? So I've been doing a lot of work with Black couples lately, and I'm just like, yo, like, this is a decent thing, because y'all are coming as a unit and expressing that you all want to work through and process through particular problems, which is a beautiful thing, right? I think that because even if you're utilizing relationship coaching or relationship therapy just to learn how to be more cordial as co-parents with one another so that you do not damage the child, that's still more beneficial than attempting to utilize the legal system in order to facilitate an outcome that may not be in anybody's favor at the end of the day.
It's not. Because the court is making weekend parents out of our daddies. Like, one of my clients said that she watched her sons have a conversation with one of their friends in the neighborhood, and both of these children are essentially in childlike terms discussing their custody agreements. Like, it's a specific day of the week that the child is at their father's house. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes the little boy will come knock on the door on that day because he wants to play. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, why are y'all never here on such and such? And he's like, because I'm with my daddy and I have to be with him on that day. And you know what the little boy said? Why can't you just go with your daddy on the weekend? That's when I go see mine. Like, what? Like, these children are 9 and 10 years old and they're having a conversation about what their custody agreements are. Because we're making weekend parents and not just, okay, you want to go to your daddy's house this week? Sure. Of course, the child should have some type of stability, a schedule, school. I get it. But it's like every other weekend, you can't be, you can be a parent, I guess.
How effective is that parenting? How impactful is that presence? You know what I'm saying? Like, how does that impact the development of a child over time? Right. But those are questions for the next episode. AP, I appreciate you being here with me. I appreciate you rocking with me. This was a very interesting episode because once again, we very rarely do we think about these things in terms of these intersections, whether it be how we don't learn how to communicate and how that manifests into, you know what I'm saying, legal custody battles, how those things transpire into the way that our kids engage with one another. It's all interconnected, right? So
All of that. I'm sending everybody to y'all therapy. I recommend it to all of my clients.
oh, yeah.
Like for real. Therapy and mediation. Y'all should go to therapy. And even if y'all don't go together, go to therapy on your own. Because everything cannot be the other person's fault all the time.
Absolutely.
So go see somebody for yourself.
we gonna close on that note because that was AP. I appreciate you, man. Till next time, y'all. Peace, love, soul, and butter rose. Hey.